Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe. And today I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Christina H., whose recovery journey began on September 7th, 2011. Christina is married to Pete M., who many of you will recognize from his powerful episode, Illusion of Control. Pete M. goes all in. She's a proud stepmom to 3 wonderful men, a loving grandmother to 3 amazing grandchildren, and shares life with her mini golden doodle, Theodore. Christina enjoys baking, reading, golfing, and this was my favorite, hunting for shark teeth. She's also a grateful member of Al-Anon, where she's found growth, healing, and serenity. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Hi, Christina. How are you doing?
Hi, Joe. Great. Excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to hear your story, and I really appreciate your willingness to come on. And it's always good to kind of hear recovery from the opposite spectrum of where I'm at, and so I appreciate your willingness to do that. So I guess what was it like growing up, Christina?
I'm glad you asked. That is obviously where my journey started, but I will say I didn't know that until I came to Al-Anon and did some work. But growing up, Christina, was good. I grew up in a household with both parents. I have a brother. We had a good life. We had everything we needed. Both my parents worked really hard. Probably about junior high-ish. My dad started his own business. And I don't know if you've ever had your own business, but when that happens, you're all in. So we were all in at that point. But it's funny, my parents always said you were always an adult. You were always part of the adult conversations. You never wanted to play with the kids. I remember, being the helper and making sure everyone was okay, including extended family, not just my family of origin. I had aunts calling me to talk to cousins and, always trying to solve the family issues and make sure everyone was getting along. Another thing I like to share is that I always had boyfriends in my life that needed some sort of saving for whatever reason. And so that was a trend. And throughout my entire journey and until I met my current husband, thank goodness to this program. But I always had, some love interest that needed saving. And I remember my parents saying to me, at a young age in high school or whatever, you don't need to save them. You're not going to save them, or why are you with that person? They have all these issues. But I always seemed interested in trying to do that. But I had everything I needed. I had a wonderful childhood. We always did outdoor activities. I'm from Wyoming originally, so we were always outdoors. And, I later learned in my journey that trauma my mom experienced as a child, impacted our family group. And I didn't know that when I was a kid, when I was growing up. So pretty cool to learn that throughout my journey.
And you said you always had that, you're always looking to have relationships where you were kind of the save, but do you know where that came from, or where that, how that started?
I don't, so we talk about this a lot in Al-Anon. We have our own character defects, right? And caretaking is not bad. And it's not a defect until it becomes caretaking where you're no longer taking care of yourself. And that's where mine always ended up. To where I was taking care of everyone else and not looking at my own health or wellness, mental health, along the way. And, part of that, I still today believe I was just born with that. I care deeply about people. I love people, and I'm kind of all in with you once we know each other. And that's fine if I keep a good balance and I ensure that I'm not, trying to do for you what you can do for yourself. But I didn't know that till I came here.
So, I heard somebody say it one time. It's like Al-Anons love alcoholics. That's how we kind of, we're like that perfect match where we're looking for people who are the caretakers, and the caretakers are looking for people, like us. I know I had many relationships like that where it was a weird, almost toxic enmesh. I don't know if the word's enmeshment or
Meshment.
but I had very toxic relationships that way. So how did you find your way into Al-Anon? I mean, I'm not trying to fast forward, but
yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Let me share a little bit before I got to Al-Anon, because I think that's important.
Yeah.
So, like I talked about, my childhood, all these boyfriends. And in college, I was working at a car dealership, and I found my perfect alcoholic. I didn't know it at the time, but I found him there working with me in the car dealership. And we began dating, and he loved to have fun. And I was in my early 20s, so I thought that was fine, right? We would go to the local bowling alley on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. And we had fun. We had a lot of friends that went with us. And during that time, it seemed fun. But I do remember always saying to one of my girlfriends at the time, I am never going to be like you. I am never going to be, she was already married at the time, and her husband was also at the bar with us. And, not coming home at night, not wanting to be at home. And I would always tell her, I'm never going to be like you. But I did, I followed her same journey. So, we dated for about 4 years, and, things were still fun and not too bad yet. But I will say at my wedding, I should have realized now's the time to get out. When they have to go to the bar, and I mean the picture people who are trying to take pictures to get your husband and all of his friends to come back to the church to take pictures, you should maybe notice something's wrong. But I didn't. That was just the life we lived at the time. So fast forward, we get married, and we start to feel some issues, right? So he's not leaving the bar with me anymore. I find myself, trying to find him or call him or convince him to come home. I tried drinking with him, which I wasn't very good at. So I know I don't belong in a chair next to you, Joe, but I definitely belong in Al-Anon. I tried all the things to get him to stop drinking. And to the point of right before our wedding, I actually put on, I got married in the Catholic Church, and you have to take this big test or this quiz or whatever. And one of the questions was like, do you have a concern about alcohol or drugs with your loved one? And I said yes. And of course, that created a big fight. But we had to have a discussion with the pastor or priest. And he said, well, what are you concerned about? And I said, well, he drinks a lot and smokes pot. And he said, well, the drinking, we should work on that. But the smoking pot, I'm not really worried about. That's not a big deal. I just was so mad because I knew that if I told the priest, it would all go away, right? Like he was going to be the savior to my problems. That didn't work out. So that lasted for another 4 years. And it just got worse and worse over time. We tried moving. That didn't work, right? We always talk about that relocation and how that's going to cure it all, but that didn't work. And so one day I was talking to a friend and he said, have you ever taken the Al-Anon quiz? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, here's a link. Just go check it out. And so I went onto the Al-Anon website where there is a questionnaire. And I don't know, maybe it's 20 questions or something. I can't remember. And I filled it out, and I like to say that's the only thing I got 100% on as a joke, but I think I answered yes to every question, right? It's, are you concerned about your loved one's drinking? Do you count the number of drinks your loved one has every day? Or whatever, all these questions. And I said yes to all of them. And so I said, wow, that's not good. So I didn't do anything about it yet. And we had a lot going on, and finally it all blew up. And I told him I wasn't going to come home one night because he hadn't been coming home. So, now I'm going to do the same thing. I don't know where I was going, to a friend's house, but anyway, my parents called, and my dad started asking me all these questions. And I said, Dad, sit down and put Mom on speaker, because I'm only going to say this one time and I'm never going to say it again. And so I just told them all the things that had been happening, and how bad it was. And my part too, right? I was trying to do everything I could to keep it from everyone. I was isolating. I mean, I hardly had any friends at that point because, it had just gotten so bad. And so after that day, I went back to work, and a girl I worked with had been in recovery, and she said, I'll go with you. And I said, okay. And I just remember walking in that room. It was a Wednesday night, which is crazy that this long I remember. It was a Wednesday night, and it was a step meeting out of the book, which I still love today. And I think I cried through the entire meeting. I don't remember hearing anything or thinking to myself, oh, this is the place for me. I just remember crying the whole time. But I must have heard something. And maybe it was just that we share, we suggest you come 6 times before you decide if you like us or not. But I kept coming back. And what I learned there is, in the very beginning, really quickly, was that even if the people in the room's story didn't match mine, it resonated enough that I didn't feel alone anymore. And, I started trying to find a sponsor. We suggest a sponsor in Al-Anon as well, just like in AA. And they always said, try to find someone who has what you want. And there was a woman in there who was very put together, and she just seemed so like, I don't know why she was there. I kept thinking to myself, why is she here? She seems so put together. She seems so like nothing's wrong in her life. And one day she came in, and she was crying, and she was telling a story about her ex-husband, who was still battling addiction and had showed up to her house the night before, was trying to get in her house and all these things. And just seeing her as a human, right, that she did have something going on in her life, that she wasn't this perfect person I had put up on this pedestal. I asked her to be my sponsor. And she was great because she was calm, and she talked through, I think I went through steps 1 through 3 with her. And but she helped me talk through some things. Like when I first got in the rooms, I heard, sorry, I muted myself. When I got in the rooms, I heard other women saying, you should never make a rash decision in the first. So I had already made those decisions, right? So now I'm like, should I not have done that? What should I do? And she said to me, no, just pause. You already made some decisions. That's okay. somehow your higher power, got you there. And it's okay. You don't have to be like everyone else in the rooms. And so it was really good that I had her to guide me early on in Al-Anon. And she really started me on the journey of this higher power. What I didn't share is that my ex-husband and I had some infertility issues, and we had lost a couple of babies. And, I just didn't trust a higher power. I thought that my higher power at the time was just punishing me, and I couldn't figure out why, And early on, she helped me to try to see that my higher power didn't have to be some church God, right? It could be whatever it was for me. And we talked a lot about nature, like being out in nature. Do you feel closer to a higher power? And I said yes. And so she really helped me early on with that.
That first thing I was going to ask, because it's helpful, I think, for people who are listening who may not know, especially maybe from an Al-Anon perspective, what is a sponsor? Like, what is that,
Yeah, I love that question because I think early on, I just thought it was someone who was going to walk me through the steps and then I would graduate. But I quickly learned that it was someone to share experience, strength, and hope with, right? They share their journey. They share how they've gotten through whatever's in front of them. And then you can see if that resonates with you. She early on told me something that I really latch onto today, which is, I don't know if I'm helping you, but you're helping me. And at first I thought, what does that mean? But we would sit down at her table, and she actually used the AA 12 and 12. I've used other things with sponsees, but she used the AA 12 and 12. It just worked for her. And we would sit down at her table and we would talk, right? And she would ask me questions, and we would read from that book and share what it felt or meant to us, what we read in the book. And it just is someone to guide you through the steps and be there for you when you need to talk to someone more in depth than you can during a meeting or after a meeting, when things are going on in your life that you need to process.
Was especially early on, was there anything that surprised you about the meetings or about Al-Anon or about, this process, I guess?
Yeah. So early on, I heard a lot of people talking about the illusion of control. And I thought to myself, the illusion of control? No. I'm in full control of my life, even though I wasn't. Right. And so that's step one, and once I got into step one and really listened to it and talked with my sponsor about, what it meant, I realized I wasn't in control. And I also tell a story about how, sometimes my higher power has to smack me in the face for me to see it. And so that illusion of control is one thing that he had to do that with me. And I remember sitting at work one day. This was early on in Al-Anon. And I got a call from a collection agency. And they said, ma'am, you have not paid your bill for 2 months. And I said, what are you talking about? I know I have. Let me go check. Oh, I know I've paid it. And I hadn't. I had not. Which is not surprising to most in a situation with an active alcoholic. I mean, my life, especially towards the end, was super chaotic. I never knew if he was coming home, how he was coming home, if I was going to have to go pick him up or whatever. And so, of course, I would miss paying a bill. But that's what it took for me to finally realize that I was powerless over anything, right? We don't just say powerless over alcohol and Al-Anon. We're powerless because we don't have the power. We don't have the control. And so hearing that in the rooms really helped me realize that those people felt the same way before they got there that I was feeling then. If I could just do one thing right, maybe he would stop. And that wasn't the case, right? I didn't have that power. So that, and then also just how vulnerable people were sharing their stories freely with each other and laughing about things that I was crying about at the time. Just a lot of laughter about things that make some people cringe. But we laugh because we know what it feels like. We know what that experience feels like, and the insanity of it. And so, it's nice to hear that laughter today. But at the time I thought, how can these people be laughing about this awful stuff?
I think that's it is important, we talk about rule number 62. My sponsor today is drills it in my head. I have a picture on my wall that says rule number 62. So it's like, never take myself too seriously, and that's something I learned in this program, because I used to take myself I was very serious. Everything was about me all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
So were there specific like behaviors in yourself that you like recognize, now, like you're like, oh, I know some of it you talked about a little bit in your childhood, but like even as an adult, were there behaviors that you recognize that was like
Yeah, sure. So it starts with step 4, right? So I had to get through steps 1, 2, and 3. And then I moved to Virginia. And so I had to start over. Then the really cool part is that I walked into a group that went to dinner every Thursday night before the meeting. And I had an immediate family. So that is the cool thing about Al-Anon is we've moved a lot. And I've moved a lot in my journey. And being able to have that immediate family was huge. And so when I got to Virginia, I had to find a new sponsor. And I found a woman who was actually a double winner, as we call them. So she was in Al-Anon and AA. And she sponsored a lot of women that I knew. And so I asked her to be my sponsor. And she walked me through steps, the remainder of the steps, but really closely steps 4 through 9. And I remember her giving me a worksheet and her saying, walk me through your character assets and your character defects. And I usually pride myself on being someone who's pretty confident, who has self-confidence. And I was pretty broken at the time. And so I could easily point out my character defects, right? The controlling, the too much caretaking, the always having to be right. And so she threw that list away and she said, okay, I only want you to put your assets down. And I saw that caretaker was on the assets side too. And I was so confused, and that's where she said to me, like, it's okay to care for people as long as you're still caring for yourself. And so that was a great exercise because I could, look at things from a little bit of a different angle than I had been looking at them for years. So through that journey, I was working at a hospital and it was pretty stressful. And I notice that when I get under extreme stress, those character defects come back quickly, right? And they come back strong. Even today, I catch myself, trying to control, trying to be right. I think my husband says something like manage, fix, and control. And I'm just like, yeah, what else are we here to do? And so, and my stepsons and their wives would also probably say that I am a planner. And I don't think they mean that in a good way. So I've had to work on that over the years too. But anyway, I was working at this hospital and one of my friends in Al-Anon got me these blocks and they have a bunch of different slogans on them. And one of the slogans is, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And during that time, I had to like think about that slogan all day, every day. And I still do sometimes today, because I don't have to keep talking until they finally see that I'm right, you know? And my parents would probably say I was like that as a child too, you know, always trying to get the last word in, because I know I'm right and they'll just listen this time. Um, but truthfully, when I stay on mute, I say today because I work from home, and listen and only interject when I need to, I am much happier. Um, you know, I'm not trying to fix, manage, and control everything. Um, I later became a project manager, and I got to tell you, that's a perfect job for an Al-Anon, because, you know, you build out a schedule with deliverables, and you're managing everyone to those deliverables on a timeline. And man, if I don't have to work my Al-Anon program in that job, I don't know what's worse. But anyway, I think, you know, they can still come back today. And that's why, you know, in Al-Anon, sometimes they hand out chips, but it's not very often. And I always joke that if we handed out white chips, I'd probably be getting one every week, because that control piece of me just comes right back. And it's driven from fear for me, usually, you know, fear of failing, fear of not doing things right, fear of upsetting someone. And, you know, in Al-Anon, here in the rooms, when I heard people share, I learned that, you know, other people's reaction to what I say or do is none of my business. It's their reaction. And I don't have any control over that. But man, it's so hard. It's still hard for me today, and I've done a lot of work, so there's still work to do. But that's still hard for me. And on the planning piece, I just have to say that I think, you know, my stepkids have really helped me with that, because they're not planners. You know, they're younger. They like to fly by the seat of their pants, and they've really helped me work on that and accept that it's okay to not have every hour of every day planned. And actually, it's sometimes more enjoyable. So I still do plan the things that matter to me, that I know if they don't happen, I'm going to have a resentment that I have to deal with later. But if there are things that, you know, how important is it, right? If there are things that aren't that important to me, it's okay to just let it go and see what happens. But it's challenging.
That's the thing about like character defects. I think for me, it's like a daily thing. There are character defects for me that different ones will pop up for different reasons daily, and I think, you know, it's a daily. I think we have to give those, you know, for me, give them to my higher power daily. You know, if when I see them crop up. The crazy thing is, I don't always know that they're cropping up, and I don't always recognize that, oh, that's a character defect. I just think I'm being funny and sarcastic, but really, I'm reacting. I'm trying to get somebody because I'm feeling some sort of emotion about what was done or said, or, you know,
So true.
so that's tough.
So true.
It's tough,
Yeah.
but and you're the fix, manage, and control reminds me of I don't know if you've ever read Chuck C's New Pair of Glasses. It's a cool book, recovery book, but it's where he talks about uncover, discover, discard. You know,
Mm,
and that's like the big thing. Um,
yeah.
but
It's good.
so how does your recovery change your family dynamic? You know.
Man, that's the biggest impact for me. I'm able to have amazing relationships with my parents today, that honestly, when I went to college, I would have never expected. Um, you know, we talk about things that are most families wouldn't talk about, right? And we there's just a love there that I couldn't have imagined. And the truth is, it's because I've worked on myself, and I trust my higher power, and like you said, give those character defects up whenever I can, as quickly as possible, because they are still going to crop up. But if I can give them over, then I don't try to fix, manage, and control my family, right? If they're making a decision that I don't feel would be the decision I would make, I don't have to say that out loud. Like, it's so amazing that today, I don't have to say that out loud, what I'm thinking. They don't need to know. It's, how important is it? Is it going to hurt their feelings? Like we like to say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. But for me, that's really pausing and thinking, like, do you need to say that? Is that your business? And that took a lot of time. And, a few years ago, I was working with a sponsor, and I was getting ready to go home for a holiday weekend, and my entire family was going to be there, extended family. And one of my uncles was suffering from this disease, and it really impacted our entire family, because whenever we would all be together, it was always some mess. And so I asked my sponsor to work with me on the traditions, but with my family. And wow, what an exercise that was. I mean, honestly, I think in my recovery journey, besides doing the steps the first time, that really took it to the next level for me. And she said to me before I left, after we did those exercises, she said, why don't you just pray about how you can be of service to your family when you go home? And so I did. The whole time I'm flying home, I'm looking out the window once in a while, and I'm just saying, God, please show me how I can be of service to my family. And my mom and dad, I think, both picked me up from the airport that day. And my mom, I hadn't shared any of this with my mom, and she said something like, hey, we're going to all be together. And, I think it's important that we just let things go, don't get engaged with anything, and just enjoy our time together. And I thought that was so crazy. I'm like, where did she come up with that? I didn't say it to her, so I don't know. She's not an Al-Anon, so I don't know where she heard that, but it was great. And we did. We went up there. We had a barbecue. My uncle was drinking. It was a mess, but we all had a great time. And 4 months later, he passed away from this disease. And I just remember, thinking to myself, wow, that was my higher power at work, allowing us to have that one last family time all together. And we didn't know, we didn't know that was coming. But doing that work helped me be able to halt and pause and listen, and not engage in some of the situations that occurred.
So you've mentioned it a couple of times, so I have to ask you about the pause. How do you, just like how did you put that into your life and your program, and what does it look like in practice?
Well, Joe, I don't do it perfectly, because like you said, sometimes things trigger me and I forget to pause. But hearing it in meetings, talking it out with my Al-Anon friends, and, working with a sponsor, it's one thing I just kept hearing over and over again in this program. And it took me time. It took me time to get there. And like I said, I don't do it perfectly today, but sometimes it really looks like taking a big breath, hearing what I'm hearing and just taking that big breath. Or like at work, not hitting the unmute button, like literally feeling like, okay, I have to unmute. I need to say something, and saying no, like talking to myself in my head saying, no, you don't. Let them keep going. See where it goes. And usually I don't even need to say what I was thinking I needed to say right at that moment. And another thing I knew is if I'm feeling really agitated or everything just seems to be going wrong, we have another saying that we say. We have a lot of sayings in Al-Anon, but we have a thing that we say, and it's HALT. And it's, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And for me, it's usually that I'm hungry or tired, honestly. And so, that might look like getting a snack or taking a nap, which I would have never done before I got here. But sometimes, I just need to stop, literally stop, take that breath, hold my hand back from the mute button, even if it hurts, and let some time go by. Because when I just react, you don't know what's coming out. It can be so scary for me, honestly. And, that's the thing, right? When I worked steps 8 and 9 and I had to look at who do I have to make amends to. First of all, Joe, what I didn't share with you at the beginning is my very first meeting was step 9, making amends to others we've harmed. And I'm sure you can imagine that didn't feel very good as an Al-Anon walking into an Al-Anon meeting for the first time. I remember thinking to myself, people I harmed, what? Are you kidding me? But I learned that I did have a part in this, and that's another thing, in Al-Anon, the WSO doesn't like us to use the word qualifier, because the way I was raised in Al-Anon is that we're our own qualifiers, right? We have our own character defects. We have our own parts in this journey. And yes, the alcoholic or the addict does have a part, but we also have a part. And so just through that journey, learning my part and doing step 8 and 9 made me realize that pause, implementing that pause in my life may prevent me from having to do further amends to people that can be so hard, it can really take a lot sometimes to make those amends. And sometimes it's well received and it, is all joy and happy afterwards. And sometimes the person has said to me, I don't even know what you're talking about, which really hurts. But it's true, right? I'm the one drinking the poison, holding on to it, thinking about it every day. And then I make that amends and they're like, I don't even remember you saying that, So doing that pause and practicing it every day helps me not have to do that.
I think amends are a great motivator to try to live a better life.
For sure.
It really, like you said, it's hard. It's hard to do that. And you don't always get the response you had hoped for, and so, yeah, that's, I like that you said that. And I appreciate that you said that. So how has your understanding of a higher power or your spirituality shifted since you've been in recovery?
Yeah, great question. And it's been a journey for me. I didn't have, that spiritual awakening upon coming here. It didn't happen overnight. Like I said, I felt like my higher power when I got here was punishing, and I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? And the truth is, my higher power had been there all along. I just didn't see it, right? And so for me, doing that work and some work outside of Al-Anon has helped me get to a higher power. But for me, having that flexibility for it not to be something specific, right? That it doesn't have to be a religious God, that it can be a God of our understanding or higher power of our understanding. And so, like I said, my first sponsor said, how do you feel about nature? When you're out in nature, can you, conceptualize that there's something bigger than you in charge? And I told her, yes, I do feel lighter when I'm in nature, and I can see the beauty created. Right. And I think that's why I've always tried to live somewhere where there's water. Because when I moved away from Wyoming, obviously there hasn't been mountains in my life that much since then. And so always living near water has been good for me. And when I go there, I can have a peace about me. And, talking to others about what does your higher power look like? How do you talk to a higher power? One thing my husband shared with me from AA is the third step prayer. And we actually said it at our wedding. We asked the pastor if it would be okay if we said that at our wedding. And he said, well, let me hear what it is. And so we, recited it to him. And he said, wow, I love that. I'm going to start saying that for myself. So that was pretty cool. But, just doing that with my husband, right? Doing our nightly prayers and saying the third step prayer just gives me this sense of calm. And learning that I'm not asking my higher power to do something, right? Before I came here, it was about, God, do this. God, why are you doing that? God, can you help me? Right? Now it's just, show me your will. Right? And sometimes I listen and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I still try to take it back, right? I'm like, okay, I'm giving this to my higher power. But what about that little piece? Let me keep that for a minute. And another thing that someone in Al-Anon shared with me that's really helped me is having a God box. I used to go to a women's group in Virginia. And one of the activities we did one night is making a God box. And, just writing on that sticky note, whatever's on my mind, and just sticking it in that box was kind of that physical letting it go for me. And now today, I'm able to do that without always writing it down and putting it in my God box. But for me, just being out in nature, hearing what other people used as a higher power, helped me get there to where I am today. I also listen to a spiritual music channel, and it helped me a lot in the early days of Al-Anon, just to hear that upbeat music and the words. It's funny, like I didn't even hear those words before I came to Al-Anon. I don't think. I don't know, but I'm more open to it today, which is good for me.
Reminds me, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I was just thinking, like, what's one thing that changed in you that somebody else noticed before you did? Does that make sense?
That is an interesting question. Honestly, I would say the control piece. I still feel like I try to control a lot, and I really don't mean to, but I'm human. And like I said, when I get under stress, it happens. But one of my daughter-in-laws has shared with me that she sees, that change, that I'm not trying to plan everything and do everything, and setting boundaries to ensure I'm protected, right? Not to do anything to the other person, but to protect me and my serenity. So I would say maybe that's an interesting question.
That's a good one, and I know sometimes, and also the question asker doesn't always doesn't always come through in the best way. So I appreciate you taking a stab at that one. What would be one of your favorite recovery tools that you one of your go-tos? When do you have like a go-to recovery tool?
For me, it's a daily reader. the Courage to Change book is one that I try to read every day. We actually get a recovery email that Courage to Change is in, and I like to read that every day because every morning I'm sitting down with my coffee, because for me, it kind of sets the tone for the day. There's usually some message in there, if I'm willing to hear it, that I can, think back to throughout the day when things come up, that just help me kind of stay grounded throughout the day.
What helps you on those difficult days, Christina?
So I would say just, the time in this program, I remember early on, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years into this program, I remember my mom asking, why do you still go to that thing? You're not married to that guy anymore. And I said, Mom, so I can be there for other people like they were there for me. And I think that's one thing, right? Just remembering that I do have a higher power. He brought me to this program, and that I have other people that I can call. About 2 years ago, which, in this journey, this is going to sound funny, but maybe not to you, Joe. That phone is still so heavy this far in the journey, right? Picking up the phone and actually calling another Al-Anon member to talk through something is so hard sometimes. And a couple years ago, a girlfriend and I said, okay, we're going to call each other every day. If you don't answer, cool. If you answer, great. If we talk for 5 minutes, great. If we talk for 30 minutes, even better, right? But there's no expectations. We're just going to try to call every day. And man, that has really paid off, because we're 2 years into this thing, and things have happened in those 2 years, right? Where we needed each other. But it wasn't like I hadn't been talking to you and now all of a sudden I'm calling you with this thing on my mind or whatever's going on in my life. And we don't have that rapport, right? We don't have that relationship yet. So you're just taking this in and trying to figure out, well, let me share with her what I know. But since we've built that relationship over the last 2 years, we can, call each other on a whim and say, hey, this is going on. Can we chat about it? And that has been so cool, because it's just not something I've been very good at throughout my recovery, is actually picking up that phone and calling someone that dedicated, right? That I'm doing it every day. And sometimes I call, sometimes she calls, but we're talking, or at least leaving a message if we can't talk, every day. So that's been really good in those tough times when something comes up that you just, I just really need to talk about. And, maybe she just listens. Maybe she offers her experience, strength, and hope. Maybe she asks tough questions that make me think about, how I'm responding or reacting to a certain situation. But all of that has been able to take place because of our dedication to call each other every day.
That is such an important thing. And I think, in the way these things are explained to me, is it's all a practice, and we have to practice these things. And what you just described was perfect in the idea of it's a practice. You set an intention, you guys have, started that practice, and now it's become a part of your recovery. I was talking to somebody earlier today just about that, of reaching out and calling someone,
Yeah.
while you don't need them, so that when you do need them, it isn't as heavy as
Exactly
like you described, because it's still that way for me too. If I don't practice this stuff, it's real easy to get out of the habit. So what do you wish that someone knew about Al-Anon who may be listening?
First of all, I just wish they knew it was there. I had no idea something like this was available. And I didn't know what to expect when I got there. But I wish people knew it existed, and I wish those who need it would just take that first step. Um, there's Zoom meetings today, right? If walking in a room
Yeah.
is just too much, right? Or maybe you don't want your loved one to know you're doing it, right? Maybe it's not safe for them to know. The what came out of COVID, right, is more Zoom meetings, which are good, right? They're not my favorite. I want to give hugs and be in the room with people, but they are there and available if you just want to get a feel for what Al-Anon is and see if it might be something that would work for you. But I would encourage anyone who needs it to take that first step, walk in the room. I think you'll find that people are welcoming. People feel how you feel, right? I just took a newcomer to a meeting last week, and we were leaving, and she said, "Oh, why is it so hard for me to come?" And I said, "I know, right? It's just so hard to take that first step." And she said, "I always sit at home thinking no one understands, no one gets it, no one feels the way I do. And then I come here and everyone in that room was talking about exactly how I feel, and how they have worked through it." So, man, I just honestly, I think we could all use a 12-step program, but the world will be a better place. But I just wish that people who need it would take that first step.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't. But so, what are some of the good things that have happened to you in recovery?
Um, I met my best friend in this program, and now I get to be a god mom to her daughter, which is so cool. And we share the same language, right? So we can have those tough conversations and talk through the tough stuff, because we've been through this program together. I've met a lot of wonderful people in this program. And I've seen people start from I can't be happy unless so and so is happy, to a year or so later saying, "Yeah, wow, I don't even know if that person's alive now." Um, and that was somebody I sponsored, and just how cool to see them change from "I can't be happy unless that other person is happy" to "Wow, I'm pretty happy most days and I don't even know where that person is." You know, um, just what a cool journey to see other people recover. And when we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, a few years ago, we felt strongly to come here, from a program perspective. We actually did, it was January, and we did like this dream board. And one of the things we put on there is that we wanted to be connected more to couples in recovery. And so we moved here, and today we were just talking about all the amazing couples we have in our lives that are in recovery, and to be able to see families recover together would probably be top of my list. It's great to see the Al-Anon recover. It's great to see the alcoholic recover. But when you can see a family recover together, there's nothing better.
I know it's one of the things in the book, the big book. It says you will not want to miss this.
You
Other
won't.
people's journey. You will not want to miss this for sure. So, is there anything you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered?
I don't think so, Joe. I'm just so grateful for this program, and I say the life it's given me. I can have gratitude today. Even yesterday, when I was stuck waiting for a plane, I could have gratitude that at least I was warm. I was fine. And that most days are joyful. And when the tough days come, I know what to do. I know to pray. I know to call someone else and reason it out with them. And that I'm not alone. We're not alone in this journey if we don't want to be. And it's tough. It's tough to walk in the rooms. It's tough to be vulnerable. I heard someone say last week, I used to come in here and cry all the time and be so mad that I cry. And now I cry and I think, oh, it feels so good to feel that. And that's so true. Early on when I came in here, I thought, how am I ever going to be happy? And I find myself most days, just so grateful and so happy to have this life to live and to share this journey with others.
Well, you've done an amazing job sharing your journey, Christina. And I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it will help someone out there who's listening. But I can't let you go without doing our rapid fire questions.
All right.
No pressure. All righty, my friend. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is your favorite recovery slogan?
I think I already said it, but my favorite recovery slogan is, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's probably one that I apply more today than I want to, but keep it simple.
What is your recovery superpower?
I would say sponsorship. I get so much out of sharing with other women, hearing their stories and helping them work through the steps. Of course, you always hope that you're helping them, but it always takes me back. Whenever I start with a newcomer, man, I'm right back there at my first meeting, and it always reminds me about why I'm here. So for me, I think it's sponsorship.
If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
It's okay to not be okay.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Well, I'm not going to know the person who sings it because I'm just terrible at that. But there's a song that I honestly used to listen to every day driving to work. And it's called, I think, In the Eye of a Storm.
If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Maybe to ease my character defects in times of stress. I think it still surprises me sometimes today when they pop up. You'd think after all this time I wouldn't be surprised, but they still pop up sometimes and I think, man, why didn't I see that coming? So
you're not alone in that one, that's for sure. What step do you love the most?
I think step 12.
What step do you love the least?
9. I'm doing my best every day to not have to do step 9. I still have to sometimes, but I really try hard not to.
I'm with you. What is one of your favorite movies?
I'd have to say The Holiday.
And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You did the best you could.
Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time today, Christina. It's been an honor to hear your story, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Look forward to hearing more stories on your show.
Thank you. And for the rest of you out there, please subscribe to our friends at the dailyponderables.com, your recovery source for inspiration and encouragement every day. A new episode of the Cup of Joe Show is released every Thursday at noon. Visit thecupofjoeshow.net, or you can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps: Podbean, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share, because someone out there needs to hear this today. Have a good day.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to the Cup of Joe Show.